There is a man hanging from a lighthouse. He is dead. He hanged himself. His name is John, or as the world state called him, the Savage. And the question that has haunted readers for nearly a century is simple. Why? Why did a man who had everything given to him, comfort, pleasure, belonging, a place in the most stable civilization ever created, choose a rope over a life? This is not a book summary. This is an autopsy of a man, of a world, of a choice that should have been impossible, but wasn't. And by the end of this video, you will understand something uncomfortable. John didn't destroy himself. He was destroyed, methodically, completely, and with a smile. Before we can understand why John died, we have to understand the world that killed him. And I need you to really sit with this, because Huxley didn't write a fantasy. He wrote a blueprint. The world state operates on one principle: stability through happiness. Not freedom, not truth, not meaning. Happiness. Every human being is manufactured in a hatchery, not born, decanted. Eggs are fertilized, embryos are split, and the resulting humans are chemically conditioned from the moment of conception to fit perfectly into a predetermined caste. Alphas, betas, deltas, epsilons, gammas. Alphas are tall, intelligent, leaders. Epsilons are stunted, simple, workers. And here is the first knife. They don't rebel because they don't want to. That's the genius of the system. The epsilons aren't oppressed in the way we understand oppression. They're not angry. They're not suffering. They've been chemically and psychologically engineered to love their servitude. Hypnopedia, sleep teaching, plants slogans into their unconscious minds from birth. A gram is better than a dam. Ending is better than mending. I'm so glad I'm a gamma. These aren't opinions. They are the structure of their minds. They can no more question these slogans than you can question the language you think in. And if any residual discomfort survives the conditioning, there's soma, the perfect drug. Half gram for a half holiday, a gram for a weekend, 2 grams for a trip to the other place. No side effects, no hangover, no withdrawal, just pure, clean chemical peace. The world state has eliminated war, eliminated poverty, eliminated disease, eliminated old age. It has also eliminated art, religion, philosophy, history, literature, family, love, grief, and anything else that makes human beings deep, because depth is unstable. Depth creates questions. Questions create doubt. Doubt creates conflict, and conflict threatens stability. So they didn't just remove suffering, they removed the capacity for suffering, which means they removed the capacity for meaning. Now, into this world drops a man who has all of those things they removed. Every single one. His name is John. Section 2. The man who wasn't manufactured. He was born the old way, the disgusting way, as the world state would call it. His mother, Linda, was a beta from the world state. She was accidentally left behind in Malpais during a vacation trip to the reservation. Pregnant, abandoned, with no soma and no conditioning to fall back on. Linda did what any beta would do without soma. She fell apart. She drank. She slept with the men of the village. She taught John the values of the world state, but from the outside, without the context that makes those values functional. She told him that flying was wonderful, that soma was perfect, that everyone belonged to everyone else. But she couldn't give him soma. She couldn't give him the world state. She could only give him the longing for it, and the shame of not having it. So, John grew up in the crack between two worlds, too savage for the world state, too world state tainted for the reservation. The reservation itself was a brutal place. It was the dumping ground for everything the world state rejected: religion, disease, aging, community, ritual, suffering. The people of Malpais lived the way humans lived for thousands of years. They farmed, they prayed, they bore children, they aged, they died. And John, the half-breed, the outsider, watched them. He was excluded from the initiation rituals. The other boys wouldn't let him participate. His mother's behavior made him a target of contempt. He was beaten, isolated, mocked. So what did John do? He found a book, not just any book, the complete works of William Shakespeare. This is the most important detail in the entire novel, and most people miss it. Shakespeare became John's entire framework for understanding reality. He didn't learn about love from experience. He learned it from Romeo and Juliet. He didn't learn about jealousy from feeling it. He learned it from Othello. He didn't learn about honor from being taught. He learned it from Henry V. John's entire inner life, his values, his moral compass, his understanding of human nature was built not from lived experience but from literature. And literature, as Huxley understood, is dangerous because literature makes you feel things. It creates expectations. It creates ideals. It creates a version of reality that is more meaningful, more intense, more beautiful than reality itself. John didn't just read Shakespeare. He believed Shakespeare. And that belief, that framework, would become the weapon he used against the world state, and the weapon the world state used against him. The first time John sees the world state, he quotes The Tempest. "O brave new world that has such people in't." He says it 5 times in the novel. The first time, with wonder. The last time, with despair. And the distance between those two utterances is the entire tragedy of John's life. Section 3. The Collision. What John believed versus what he found. Let me walk you through the collision, because this is where most analysis gets lazy. People say John couldn't adapt. No, John could have adapted. That's not the point. The point is what adapting would have cost. John arrives in the world state carrying 5 beliefs that Shakespeare gave him. Belief 1. Love should be earned, not distributed. In the world state, everyone belongs to everyone else. There is no exclusivity, no commitment, no courtship. Sex is casual, constant, and meaningless. When Lenina Crown, the woman John is drawn to, treats sex the way the world state taught her, John is horrified. He doesn't see freedom. He sees wholeness being treated as nothingness. He calls her a strumpet, not because he's puritanical, but because he expected Juliet. He expected a love story, a courtship, a bond that meant something. And what he got was, everyone belongs to everyone else. Want to go to the feelies? Belief 2. Suffering has meaning. The world state eliminates suffering. Every physical pain, soma. Every emotional discomfort, soma. Every difficult thought, soma. John has lived his entire life in suffering. On the reservation, suffering was the price of belonging. Rituals hurt, fasting hurt, labor hurt, but they meant something. They connected you to your community, to your gods, to yourself. In the world state, there is no meaning in comfort. Comfort is just comfort. It leads nowhere. It teaches nothing. It connects you to nothing. Belief 3. Death should be faced, not hidden. In the world state, death is sanitized. People die at 60 in comfortable hospital beds, pumped full of soma, watching television. Children are conditioned to accept death casually. They play in the death centers, eating ice cream while bodies are disposed of. There is no grief, no mourning, no ritual. John has watched his mother die, and he grieved. He felt the full, devastating weight of it. That grief was the most human thing he'd ever experienced, and the world state treated it like a malfunction. Belief 4. Truth is more important than happiness. This is the core conflict. The entire world state is built on the opposite principle. The controller himself, Mustafa Mond, admits that the world state has traded truth for happiness, that art, religion, philosophy, all the things that make life true, were sacrificed on the altar of stability. Mond says, people are happy. They get what they want, and they never want what they can't get. They're well off. They're safe. They're never ill. They're not afraid of death. They're blissfully ignorant of passion and old age. They're plagued with no mothers or fathers. They've got no wives or children or lovers to feel strongly about. And if anything should go wrong, there's soma. John's response is the most important line in the novel. But I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want real danger. I want freedom. I want goodness. I want sin. And Mond replies, in fact, said Mustafa Mond, you're claiming the right to be unhappy. And John says, then that's what I want. Let that sink in. A man standing in the most comfortable civilization ever created, claiming the right to suffer, not because suffering is good, but because without suffering, nothing is good. Without the possibility of loss, love is meaningless. Without the possibility of failure, achievement is meaningless. Without the possibility of pain, healing is meaningless. John isn't rejecting happiness. He's rejecting a happiness that costs everything that makes happiness worth having. Belief 5. The self must be preserved at all costs. This is John's most Shakespearean belief, the tragic hero, the man who would rather die on his feet than live on his knees. Othello, Coriolanus, King Lear. Shakespeare's heroes choose destruction over compromise. John has read every one of them. He knows how this story ends, and he chooses it anyway. Section 4. Lenina, the wound that wouldn't close. I need to talk about Lenina separately, because she is not a subplot. She is the central wound. Lenina Crown is the most misunderstood character in Brave New World. People dismiss her as a shallow beta who can't understand John, but that's not fair. Lenina is a victim too. She has been manufactured, conditioned, soma-fed. Her entire personality was designed in a lab. She can no more understand John's longing for meaning than a fish can understand thirst. But here's the tragedy. She feels something. When Lenina looks at John, something in her conditioning cracks. Not much. Just a fracture, a tiny, terrifying awareness that there might be something more than what she's been programmed to want. She desires him, but not just sexually. She desires him in a way she can't name. In a way her vocabulary doesn't have words for. She says she wants him, but what she really wants is whatever it is that makes him different. And John wants her, but not the version of her that the world state created. He wants the version that doesn't exist. The version that could love him the way Juliet loved Romeo, exclusively, intensely, sacrificially. They are two people reaching for each other across an unbridgeable gap. The scene in John's apartment is the most painful in the novel. Soul. Lenina arrives, takes off her clothes, and offers herself to John. She is doing exactly what her conditioning tells her is generous, normal, and kind. She is offering him the highest gift her world knows how to give, and John responds with fury. He calls her an impudent strumpet. He throws her to the floor. He nearly kills her. This is not John being cruel. This is John's framework collapsing in real time. Lenina's offer isn't an act of love in John's Shakespearean vocabulary. It's proof that she is everything he fears. A person without depth, without sacrifice, without the capacity for the only kind of love he recognizes as real. He is not attacking Lenina. He is attacking the world that made her, and the world that made her unmakeable. After that moment, something breaks in John permanently. Lenina becomes not just a person, but a symbol of everything he can never have and everything he can never escape. Every time he sees her, he sees the distance between his world and hers, between meaning and emptiness, between Shakespeare and Soma. And the worst part? He still wants her, even after everything, even after the fury and the shame and the violence. He still wants the version of Lenina that doesn't exist. He still wants the Juliet inside the beta. That wanting, that impossible, unsatisfiable wanting is the rope. Section 5. Linda's death. The moment the ground disappeared. If Lenina is the wound that wouldn't close, Linda's death is the moment the ground disappears beneath John's feet entirely. Linda dies in the Park Lane Hospital for the dying. She is 60 years old, the standard death age in the world state. Her body is failing, but she doesn't know it. She's been on a constant soma holiday for weeks. She is already gone. Her mind left before her body. John comes to visit her. He sits beside her. He tries to connect with her, to reach the mother he loved on the reservation, the woman who sang him lullabies, who held him when the other children beat him, who told him stories about the other place that turned out to be true. But Linda doesn't recognize him. She's floating in a soma dream, and when she opens her eyes, she doesn't see her son. She sees a TV screen. She mumbles about a vacation. She smiles, and then she dies, smiling. John's grief is volcanic. He breaks down. He shouts. He tries to shake her awake, and the hospital staff, conditioned to see death as routine, stare at him like he's malfunctioning. Children from the death conditioning classes wander in, eating cream ice cream, playing among the beds of the dying. They're learning that death is nothing, that grief is a disorder, that the correct response to loss is nothing. John's grief is not just about losing his mother. It's about the fact that the world state has made grief impossible. Not just for him, for everyone. And if grief is impossible, then love was meaningless, because grief is the proof that love mattered. If you can't grieve, you can't love. This is the moment John realizes the full scope of what the world state has done. They haven't just taken away suffering, they've taken away the evidence that anything ever mattered. After Linda's death, John begins to unravel his Shakespearean framework, which requires that grief have an outlet, that death have dignity, that love have a cost, has nowhere to land. The world state absorbs every blow he throws at it and asks, "Would you like some soma?" And this is where the novel becomes not just a tragedy, but a horror story. Because the horror isn't that John is suffering. The horror is that his suffering is ineffective. It changes nothing. It reaches no one. It is a man screaming into a void that has been engineered to be incapable of hearing him.
Section 6. The Riot. The moment John lost himself. After Linda's death, John does something desperate. He goes to the Soma distribution center at the hospital and tries to disrupt the daily ration. He throws the Soma boxes out the window. He shouts at the Deltas, "Don't take that horrible stuff. It's poison. It's poison." He's not trying to free them. Not really. He's trying to create a moment of shared meaning, a moment where suffering is acknowledged, where grief is expressed, where the lie of chemical happiness is exposed. But the Deltas don't understand him. They can't understand him. Their vocabulary doesn't include the concept of poison that feels good. To them, Soma is life. Soma is happiness. Soma is the answer to every question they've ever been programmed to ask. John's words are literally meaningless to them. They stare at him with blank confusion, then anger, then rage. How dare this man take away their happiness? How dare he disrupt their ration? A riot breaks out. Not a revolution, not an awakening. A riot for Soma. The Deltas don't fight for freedom. They fight for their chains. The police arrive. Soma vapor fills the air. The Deltas calm down. The riot ends. And John is left standing in the aftermath, watching people choose their own imprisonment and defend it with violence. This is the second most devastating moment in the novel, because John has now tried the only tool he has: Shakespearean passion, moral outrage, the truth, and it has failed. Completely. Totally. The world state doesn't need to censor dissent. It doesn't need to imprison rebels. It just needs to give people what they want. John isn't defeated by force. He's defeated by indifference. And indifference is the one enemy Shakespeare never taught him how to fight. Section 7. The Conversation with Mond. The Trial of Civilization. After the riot, John is brought before Mustafa Mond, the controller of Western Europe. And what follows is the most important conversation in dystopian literature. Mond is not a villain. This is what makes him terrifying. He is a man who understands exactly what the world state has sacrificed, and has chosen to sacrifice it anyway. He has read Shakespeare. He's read the Bible. He knows philosophy, religion, art. He knows everything that the world state has destroyed, and he chose this world. He says, beauty's attractive, and we don't want people to be attracted by old things. We want them to like new ones. He says, chronic war is not nearly so destructive as chronic happiness. He says, the world's stable now. People are happy. They get what they want, and they never want what they can't get. And John, driven by everything Shakespeare gave him, makes his stand. But I don't want comfort. I want God. I want poetry. I want real danger. I want freedom. I want goodness. I want sin. And Mond responds, in fact, you're claiming the right to be unhappy. Then that's what I want. I need you to really hear this exchange, because it's not just about Brave New World, it's about the world we're building right now. Mond is making a rational argument. He's saying, look at the numbers. No war, no famine, no disease. 99% of people are content. Is that not worth the sacrifice of art, religion, philosophy? Things that most people didn't engage with meaningfully anyway? John is making an existential argument. He's saying, a life without the possibility of suffering is not a life. It's a simulation. And I would rather be real and in pain than artificial and at peace. And here's what Huxley understood that most dystopian writers don't. Both of them are right. Mond is right that the world state solves real problems. Real people died in real wars. Real people starved in real famines. The world state ended all of that. John is right that the solution costs everything that made survival meaningful in the first place. It's the trolley problem scaled to civilization. Do you pull the lever that saves billions of bodies but kills the human soul? Mond pulls the lever. John refuses. And in a world where everyone else has already pulled the lever, the man who refuses becomes a problem. Mond tells John he will be sent to an island, a place for others like him, people who don't fit, alphas who are too intelligent, artists who can't stop creating, thinkers who can't stop questioning. But John doesn't want an island. He doesn't want exile among people who think like him. He wants the world to change, and the world will not change. Section 8. The Lighthouse. The Last Stand of the Self. John retreats to an abandoned lighthouse in Surrey. He chooses solitude. He chooses to live off the land, to forage, to hunt, to farm. He chooses physical suffering as a form of penance. He whips himself. He fasts. He purifies. These are not the actions of a madman. They are the actions of a man trying to prove something that the world state has made impossible to prove, that the self can survive without soma. John is conducting an experiment on himself. The hypothesis: a human being can choose suffering over comfort and remain whole. The method: live according to everything Shakespeare taught. Passion, sacrifice, honor, grief, without any of the social structures that made those values functional. And for a while it almost works. He finds a kind of peace in the ritual of daily labor. He prays. He reads Shakespeare. He exists in the way humans existed for millennia, alone with his thoughts, his body, his pain, and his meaning. But then the world finds him. A freelance reporter discovers the lighthouse, films John, broadcasts him. Within days, hundreds of people arrive by helicopter to watch the savage. They watch him whip himself. They watch him pray. They watch him suffer. And they treat it like entertainment. The savage! The savage! They laugh. They shout. They take soma. They treat his pain like a show. Because in the world state, all experience is consumption. Even suffering. Even another person's private, sacred, desperate attempt to be human. This is the final destruction. Not of John's body, that comes later, but of John's sanctuary, the one place where he could be whole, invaded, commodified, consumed by the very system he was trying to escape. And then, Lenina arrives. She steps out of a helicopter with a crowd of others. John sees her. Something inside him, the last thing holding him together, snaps. Pattern interrupt. John'ın yüzü. Gözlerindeki son ışık sönüyor. 30.00 ile 34.00. Section 9. The Self-Destruction. Why He Did It. Görsel. Fenerin girişi. Kalabalık, helikopterler, kaos. Sonra sessizlik. İp. Tavan kirişi. What happens next is the most disturbing scene in the novel. John turns on the crowd. He whips them. He whips himself. He screams. The crowd screams back. Some in terror, some in exhilaration, some on soma. It becomes a frenzied, chaotic scene of mutual violence and confusion. And then, something changes. John joins them. He stops fighting. He stops resisting. He takes the soma. He participates in the orgy-porgy. He becomes, for one night, exactly what the world state wanted him to be. When he wakes up the next morning, he remembers everything. And the shame is absolute. he compromised. The one thing he said he would never do. The one line he drew. The right to be unhappy, the right to suffer, the right to be real. He crossed it. Not because he was weak, but because the world state is designed to make crossing that line inevitable. The system doesn't break you with force. It breaks you with belonging. It breaks you by making your resistance feel like loneliness, by making your suffering feel like a malfunction, by making your values feel like a disease. John's suicide is not an act of despair. It is an act of conviction. He kills himself because the alternative, living in a world that has made his values impossible, is a slower, more complete death. He kills himself because he has proven conclusively that a man who chooses the right to suffer cannot survive in a world that has eliminated the conditions for meaningful suffering. The Lighthouse was his last experiment, and the result was the self cannot survive. Not because it isn't strong enough, but because civilization has made it irrelevant. John didn't hang himself because he was weak. He hung himself because he was the only honest man in a world that had made honesty suicidal. Section 10. The Mirror. This is about you. Now here's where this stops being about a novel and starts being about you. Huxley wrote Brave New World in 1932. He said it in the year 2540. He was off by about 5 centuries. Because we are living in it now. Not completely. Not yet. But the architecture is already here. Soma? We call it Instagram, TikTok, Netflix. Endless scrolling, endless dopamine, endless consumption. The average person checks their phone 96 times a day. 96 micro-doses of chemical reinforcement, not metaphorical, literal. Each notification triggers a small dopamine hit. The mechanism is identical. The delivery system is just more elegant. Conditioning? We don't use Hypnopedia. We use algorithms. TikTok's algorithm learns what keeps you watching and feeds you exactly that. Endlessly, ruthlessly, without variation. It doesn't need to program your unconscious. It programs your behavior directly. By curating your entire experience of reality, you are not being told what to think. You are being shown what to think about. Over and over. Until you can't think about anything else. Everyone belongs to everyone else? We call it hookup culture, swiping, matching, disposing, the commodification of intimacy. Not because intimacy is bad, but because intimacy without investment is the world state's ideal. If you can get pleasure without commitment, you'll never demand commitment. And if you never demand commitment, you'll never form bonds that could threaten the system. The elimination of art and philosophy? When was the last time you sat with a difficult idea? Not skimmed it, not consumed a 30-second summary. Actually sat with it. Let it unsettle you. Let it change you. Our entire attention economy is designed to prevent this, because a person who can sit with discomfort is a person who might question the system, and a person who questions the system is a threat to stability. The fixation on youth, Botox, fillers, anti-aging creams, the billion-dollar industry dedicated to the elimination of aging, which in Brave New World was accomplished through blood transfusions and chemical treatments. We haven't eliminated death yet, but we've eliminated dignity in aging. And that's the first step. And the most Huxleyan detail of all? We chose this. Orwell feared we would be oppressed by force. Huxley feared we would be sedated by pleasure. Orwell feared the boot stamping on the human face forever. Huxley feared the smile that makes you forget you have a face. We are not living in 1984. We are living in Brave New World, and most of us don't know it because, just like the citizens of the world state, we're too comfortable to notice. John saw it, and it destroyed him. Because seeing the truth in a world that doesn't want truth is not liberation. It's a death sentence. So the question isn't, why did John kill himself? The question is, why aren't we? Section 11. The Uncomfortable Truth. Why this matters now. Let me end with something that might actually change how you read this book and how you see your own life. Most people read Brave New World and think John is the hero. He's not. Huxley didn't write a hero story. He wrote a failure story. John fails. Completely. He fails to change the world's state. He fails to reach Lenina. He fails to save his mother. He fails to save himself. He fails to prove that the self can survive without soma. And that's the point. Huxley wasn't optimistic. He wasn't saying the human spirit will triumph. He was saying, the human spirit will not triumph, unless you change the conditions that make its defeat inevitable. John's tragedy isn't that he was too weak for the world state. His tragedy is that no one is strong enough. The system doesn't fight you. It assimilates you. It doesn't destroy your values. It makes them irrelevant. It doesn't kill you. It makes your death meaningless. The only way to survive Brave New World is to never enter it. But we're already inside. So what do? I don't have an answer. Huxley didn't either. That's what makes the novel honest. But I know this. Every time you choose discomfort over numbness, every time you read a difficult book instead of scrolling, every time you have a real conversation instead of a notification, every time you let yourself grieve instead of distracting yourself, you are being John. And every time you do that in a world designed to make it unnecessary, you are proving that the self can survive. John couldn't prove it alone. Maybe we're not supposed to. Maybe the Lighthouse was the wrong experiment. Maybe the right experiment is finding other people who also choose the right to be unhappy and standing together. But that's another video. If this video made you uncomfortable, good. That means something in you is still working. This is Aslanli analysis. We don't do summaries, we do autopsies. If you want more deep dives into the books that actually matter, the ones that hold up a mirror to reality, not just tell a story, subscribe and hit the bell. Because the algorithm doesn't want you to find videos like this, and that's exactly why you should. Tell me in the comments, what would you choose? Comfort with no meaning or suffering with meaning? Because Huxley's question hasn't expired, it's just gotten more urgent. I'll see you in the next one.